So here at the Seattle Atheist Church, the members ourselves give many of the talks. We have a planning meeting every quarter that's open to the whole community where we brainstorm ideas for talks we'd like to hear and talks we'd like to give. Then we vote on the ideas and schedule the talks that get the most votes. For today, please join me in welcoming Ruth, who will be giving a talk about parables, favorite parables for non-believers. And Ruth, you have the floor.
All right. So I'm supposed to sit in front of the camera.
Yep.
I'm going to share a PowerPoint, so I didn't know. All right. So actually, the title of this, Where Are Our Parables? Because at a planning meeting, someone said, Christians have parables, which are little stories that teach life lessons and provoke contemplation. But where are the atheist parables? And so that is what motivated me to put together this talk. So we're going to be talking about atheist parables. Where are the atheist parables? And I have stretched it more broadly to be, what kinds of things are you reading or watching that stimulates your ethical reasoning? So, okay. So in the Bible, there are a lot of parables, and I'm going to share with you one that you're probably already familiar with. And then I'm going to share with you a second one, which is a more typical one. So the first one here is the parable of the Good Samaritan. A man is attacked by thieves and left for dead by the side of the road. A rabbi walks by him and just ignores him. Then later, a Levite or a cleric walks by him and just ignores him. And it is a Samaritan, an unlikely person, because the Jews and the Samaritans usually didn't mix together. But the Samaritan sees him and immediately helps him. And the lesson from this story is that it really doesn't matter what your title is. We know you to be a good person basically by what you do. And also that it is good to help even strangers. So that's the parable of the Good Samaritan. But the parable of the wheat is a much more typical biblical parable. And so that's why parables from the Bible on whole are not really useful for atheists. So the parable of the wheat, Jesus tells his disciples this parable. The servants come in from the field and they tell their master, there are weeds growing among the wheat. What happened? We know that you only sowed good seed. So do you want us to go and pull up these weeds? But the master says, no, don't worry about it. When it's harvest time, we'll pull up the weeds with the wheat and we'll separate them then and we'll throw the weeds on the fire. Most parables are not explained, but in this case, the disciples asked Jesus, please be more clear. Explain to us what you mean by this. And he says, well, the evil one who sowed the bad seed represents the devil, and the weeds represent the people who follow the devil. And the end times we'll gather everyone, and we're going to separate out the weeds from the wheat and burn the weeds on the fire. So This is, if you're an atheist, we could critique that, but we won't spend time critiquing it. It just is not a very useful contemplation. But fear not, because atheists do have useful things to contemplate, and we usually find those in literature and more recently in film. So a parable being just a little scene that teaches something profound and can give rise to contemplation. And I'm going to talk just about Aesop's fables, and then I'll talk about a few examples from the movies. Okay, everyone is familiar with the hare and the tortoise. The story of the hare and the tortoise. The hare is so overconfident that he can beat the tortoise in any race, that he literally takes a nap in the middle of the race and ends up being beaten by the tortoise. From this, we have the from this, we take the lesson. I'm sorry. I got distracted. I was reading the chat. So anyway, I'm sorry about that. Anyway, so of course we know what the moral of the story here is: no sleeping on the job, no getting cocky, and we say, of course, slow and steady wins the race. So if you happen to be in the position of being a tortoise, you just may win by continuing to just pursue your goal. And then the other fable that I have here is the one of the boy who cried woof. So this one is a little more complex because if you contemplate what does it mean in terms of we know there are people who call like 911 numbers repeatedly, and generally speaking, those people need some special help. But we have the warning of crying woof, don't cry woof. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read for you some scenes from movies, and I want you to try to guess the movie, okay? Guess the movie. And the lesson is a little controversial in the first one. The lesson is friendship is an investment. I went to the police like a good American. These boys were brought to trial. The judge sentenced them and then suspended the sentence. They went free that very day. I stood in the courtroom like a fool, and those two bastards, they smiled at me. And the other man responds, we have known each other many years, but I can't remember the last time you invited me to your house for a cup of coffee. Let's be frank here. You never wanted my friendship, and you fear to be in my debt. If you'd have come to me in friendship, then the scum that wounded your daughter would be suffering this very day. And if an honest man like yourself made enemies, they'd become my enemies. So I don't know if you can guess the film. Yep, the film was The Godfather. The lesson is, well, you know, again, it's contemplate and dissect that scene, but friendship is an investment. Okay, the next film is about the value of taking a mental health day. This movie came out in 1986. A young man borrows a candy red Ferrari, rounds up his friends, and then make a day of it. That includes going to the Sears Tower, Wrigley Stadium, the Art Institute of Chicago, and they wind up at a parade where they get to ride on a float. The main character turns to the camera and says, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. And yes, the movie is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And the lesson is taking a mental health day once in a while can help you avoid burnout and build your vitality. Okay, another sometimes controversial concept. Our next movie is from 2000. And the lesson can be summed up by this quote from Eliza Yudkowsky. You are personally responsible for becoming more ethical than the society you grew up in. This is the scene. The teacher says, this is social studies. That is you and the world. Yes, there's a world out there. And if you don't want to meet it, it's still going to hit you right in the face. Believe me. So best you start thinking about the world now and what it means to you. What does the world mean to you? How often do you think about things outside this town? What if you look around and don't like the world? This is your assignment. Think of an idea to change the world and put it into action. At the chalkboard, a student says, that's me, and that's 3 people I'm going to help with something they can't do themselves. Then they do it for 3 other people, and that becomes 9, and those 9 become 27, and it gets really big, really fast. Does anybody guess this movie? The movie is Pay It Forward. And the lesson is that caring produces a ripple effect. Again, very controversial because, we contemplate it. Sometimes people just need help without any guarantee that they're going to pay it forward. Okay, the medium of film allows us to talk about things that are new. So this is what's very cool that we have over the Bible. People who are not very likely to read Eliza Yudkowsky's book or to watch any of his YouTube or TED Talk type things about artificial intelligence are likely to watch a movie like Her or Ex Machina. So Ex Machina is the picture on the far right there, and discuss that. And so that's one of the advantages that we have with film over, even although parables are supposed to be very short. And so I put there the quote again, you are personally responsible for becoming more ethical than the society you grew up in. Okay. And I wanted to tell one more little story. I took it out because I was worried about time. So the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, for example, is an actual parable. Two con men come and they tell the emperor that they're going to make him some clothing, but it will be invisible to anyone who is unfit for their job. He gets the clothing, which we all know is in fact nothing, a suit of nothingness, and no one will tell him. So he goes parading down the street in his nakedness, and a little boy is the first one to point out the emperor has no clothes. So the example that I had for the emperor has no clothes is the smokeless cigarette. Came out sometime in the 80s. And this thing was very difficult to light. Anyone who is a smoker or was a smoker, I shall say, knows that the ritual of lighting the cigarette is a part of the thing that has become habituated and is rewarding in and of itself. So it was difficult to light. It was especially stinky and especially disgusting tasting, even more so than other cigarettes. But no one would tell, nobody would step up and say, this is not working. It's a really bad idea. And it ended up losing the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company between $800 million and $1 billion. So that's a cautionary tale of the emperor has no clothes. Okay, so basically we have our own way to transmit thought-provoking stories, and that is through literature and film. And remember that it isn't quite as simple as the moral of the story is, which is sort of how we present things to children. Really, a parable is more complex than that and should really make you, have to think about it and also in many ways try to apply it also to your own life. So I would kick off our conversation with a question for everyone of what do you read or watch that stimulates your ethical reasoning? The talk.
All right. Let's give a round of applause for today's speaker. Please feel free to unmute yourself so they can hear. And now it's time. Give a chance for applause there.